Please welcome the family of Robert E. Hayes. Please welcome the family of Travis L. Perry. And please welcome the family of J. Myles Wilson. And now Carlos Cave.
Heavenly Father, it is again that you've allowed us to assemble here and to assemble today to honor three great men that served this state and served their districts and their communities with honor and dignity. Three men that served on our board, the SCAA, with honor and distinction. We ask that you continue to watch over their families and watch over everyone in attendance. We ask that you, as we proceed this ceremony, allow us to truly celebrate and honor the life that they led and the things that they did, again, within their communities. These and all blessings we ask of thee. We also ask that you bless the hands of those that prepared the meal that we will partake. All this in your Son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And now we'll have the induction. I'll introduce each inductee, then we'll watch a video interview that highlights their career. After the interview, I'll ask the inductee's wife and family to come forward to be recognized. Our first inductee is Robert E. Hayes. Bob Hayes served as the Director of Athletics at Wando High from 2000 to 2020 and was the Warriors' head football coach from 2000 to 2008. He guided the Mount Pleasant School to 53 state crowns and 7 Carlisle Cup awards, and the football team to the 2004 Lower State Championship. Prior to his successful stint at Wando High, Hayes worked at Stratford High in Goose Creek as the physical education department head and the football team's defensive coordinator from 1987 to 2000. In 1999, he helped lead the Knights to the Big 16 state championship. Hayes graduated from Coral Gables High in Coral Gables, Florida, his hometown, earned his bachelor's degree in physical education from Furman University in 1983, and added a Master's of Arts degree in education in 1987, also from Furman. His first job after college was Apalachicola, I think I said it right, Apalachicola High in Apalachicola, Florida, for 2 seasons, where he was an assistant football coach and teacher. He returned to Furman as a graduate assistant football coach under the legendary coach Dick Sheridan. Hayes was part of the 1985 team that went 12-2 and captured the Southern Conference Championship. That team went 2-1 in the NCAA 1AA playoffs. Hayes was a 33-year member of the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association, where he served on the board of directors, and he was the 4A Lower State Director from 2003 to 2005. Was elevated to second vice president, then first vice president, and ultimately served as president during the 2007-08 academic year. During the 2014-15 year, Hayes first worked as the SCAA representative-elect to the South Carolina High School League and served on its executive committee from 2015 to 2019. He was also on this organization's board for 2 decades. Coach Hayes was the 2002 Palmetto Touchdown Club Region 7 4A Coach of the Year and the South Carolina Football Coaches Association Lower State Coach of the Year. In 2005, he was this organization's Athletic Director of the Year, and the following season, he received Mount Pleasant Recreation Department Volunteer Appreciation Award. In 2007, Hayes was the Lower State Assistant Coach in the annual North-South All-Star Game, and the following season was an assistant coach for the South Carolina Shrine Bowl team. He garnered the Charles Arthur Stewart Athletic Administration Award in 2013 and was selected as the 2017-18 SCACA Athletic Director of the Year. 2 years ago, the Charleston County School District named the playing field at District 2 Regional Stadium Robert E. Hayes Field. Hayes is also the recipient of a 2021 SCAAA Legacy Award, and in the same year was enshrined in the South Carolina Athletic Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He passed away at the age of 60 on June 19, 2020. He was married to Tracy for nearly 36 years. And now let's go to the video.
Wando High School was pretty small when he started there. 20 years later, he had grown with Wando and grown the athletic program to be that big, all-encompassing program that it was, and successful program that it was, due to the great coaches that he was able to get, and the teachers at Wando, and the student athletes at Wando. It was all one big package, and the administration. He is very well known around the Low Country and even around the state with all the work that he's done with the Coaches Association and other groups and places that he's worked. But to me, you know, he was just my husband, and I am only really learning how broadly he has been known and around the state from people who have acknowledged him and his work, and certainly his death. But to me, he was just Bob.
I saw him as Dad at home, at school. I would see him in the hallways. I knew him as being goofy and always cracking a joke. At school, I would see him, he'd try not to smile when he saw me, but he'd have to crack a smile.
Just being a student at Wando with him there, well, one, you can't get away with anything. I remember there was a math test that I took and I got a very, very bad grade on it, and I knew about it. I was kind of hiding it from him and my mom, and literally that day he comes home and he was like, I heard you got a bad grade on your test. And I was like, how did you even know that? And he had just run into the teacher in the, break room or something, random. And so you can't get away with anything. As big as Wando was, he knew everything.
I enjoyed seeing him. I would hang out in his office with him. If I needed a break from whatever was happening at school, I knew I could go in there and just decompress.
If I needed anything, he was always there. I could run to his office and talk with him about anything, and so.
But I know a lot of my classmates, if I mentioned who he was or they didn't know, they would say, oh, he's scary. I don't cross paths with him, or I don't want to be called into his office. So I saw their point of view a lot of the time, because he could be a little intimidating if you didn't know him like we did.
I loved having him around. It was a huge sense of pride, when someone was like, oh, I know your dad. And I'm always like, ooh, in a good way or a bad way?
I hope that people still know, and I know they do. I've heard Coach Bookman say it and Coach Glover say it, and a lot of people, that he and Miss Beckham were always in it for the kids, to do what's best for the kids.
Even though I'm sure a lot of other classmates wouldn't agree, he did always have it in his mind and in his heart that what he was doing, even though they might not see it at the time, was what was going to be best for them. And saw it for myself as well, my brother.
He was the quiet, dry, funny guy that he would come out with something when you least expected it. I mean, there were times when people pranked him and he'd prank them back.
So it was my senior year of high school, and I ran this campaign to get my dad named the Duke of Wando, which was like a fun thing for Spirit Week. So there was a Duke and Duchess, and Tammy Watkins, she was named Duchess. And so it was like this big campaign, you know, I got both of them elected, and the picture is great, but it's like I did it to annoy him, you know, like he didn't want that. He would be the last person at Wando to want that.
The athletic department and the athletic program was so huge, it was all encompassing for Bob. And therefore, I pride myself on being independent and having to be independent because Wando and sports and the whole program was all-consuming for an athletic director. I mean, he'd come home at 8 o'clock at night, eat dinner, and that was pretty much it. I mean, we wouldn't see a lot of each other, except during the summer, which was also sparing. It's funny because I don't know, I mean, who knows what you do when you start out in a coaching field, where you think you're gonna go. And sometimes things take you beyond where you ever imagined you'd go. If he ever thought he'd be the athletic director at a school the size of Wando, I don't know that he ever thought that. I'm sure he had self-doubts when he went there, but was, you know, bolstered by Ms. Beckham and the other administrators and faculty. But yeah, hard work, dedication got him where he was. And like I said before, to me, I mean, he was Bob. He was my best friend. He was this guy.
We would go up to the stadium with him, and when the stadium was at I guess where Lucy Beckham High School is now. I think those are kind of some of I was actually just thinking about this the other day, you know, we would go up there, I would go up there with him, and he would put me to work, and I will say I did not love those days.
I remember growing up, we would just go, felt like every weekend, and help him tidy up the stadium or do whatever he needed help with.
You know, it was things like cleaning out the trash cans and cleaning up the stands after the football games.
I will always treasure that, those moments that we would just get to be together. I don't remember ever thinking necessarily, well, I'm sure I had the moments where I didn't want to go. I just wanted to, whatever, be at home or go hang out with friends. But for the most part, it was just enjoyable.
Obviously, looking back on them, you know, I'm so grateful that he forced me to do that, because we got to spend some really good quality time together. He loved that stadium. That was he loved that stadium maybe more than our own yard at home. And so, you know, just seeing him there and getting to kind of help him with this place that he loved so much. And, you know, that was, looking back on it, it was really a fun experience.
He wanted to have the best facilities you could have. I mean, we kind of had an old stadium that had to be rebuilt a little bit after Hurricane Hugo and all of that stuff. And, you know, not the best of facilities, but he was up there cleaning up. He had painting crews. He had all the coaches involved in doing like landscaping projects. And the week before football season was going to start, before practice started, all the coaches would be up there. They'd be putting sand out on the field and doing all that stuff to make everything just right. Even with, sometimes a little bit ratty facilities, you do the best you can to make them look as nice as you can. Luckily, for the first 17 years of his career as athletic director at Wando, the stadium was less than a half a mile away from our home because we all spent a lot of time up there.
Ultimately, I think what he would hope is that his biggest legacy is the people that he has influenced and helped and, made their lives better. Outside of just, I think, his athletes that he worked with, but, I would like to thank all of the teachers at Wando and the administrators who he worked with.
His legacy is in those student athletes who are out there doing great things. Whether it's Parker White, one of his favorite kicking classes at University of South Carolina, setting records at University of South Carolina. He went in as a walk-on. What a great thing.
I know he's watching over, was a great coach and a great man, deserves every bit of recognition he has with that field.
It's heartwarming, and it opened my eyes to the whole broader view of who he is, who Bob was. Young coaches all over the state were posting about what they learned from him, and they're carrying it forward. How to run a really great, honorable program, a football program. One of the ones that comes to mind is Coach Bendig, Eric Bendig, at Philip Simmons, one of Bob's very best friends, I think, and was a mentor to Eric as Eric was coming up through high school and even on his coaching staff.
He's in my heart every day. I love the guy. It's been tough. He's one of the biggest influences in my life, if not the biggest.
I know so many people who came to us and said, I knew your dad from this thing that he did. And I'm like, I had no clue he did that. So, I think ultimately it's the people that he interacted with and was able to build friendships with. I think, that's what I think he would want to be his biggest legacy, is just, being a positive force in the community.
I think, I guess one of them, being able to build that program into what it became, help build that program. I mean, that school is very well run. Having the support of Lucy Beckham, who was his very good friend, very dear friend and mentor, helped a lot. But to be able to say, you built this athletic program into what it was and have all the successes with your great coaching staff and the student athletes is probably his biggest legacy. And then of course there's the stadium that's on the campus. He worked very hard. He was very proud of his work with the firm that designed and constructed the stadium. Took a great deal of pride in participating in the building of the stadium, and he absolutely loved that and loved being able to help bring that to the campus. A district stadium, but to the Wando campus.
He dedicated his whole career to that, building that, and not just that stadium, the stadium prior to that.
For me, I mean, it's like the feather in the cap. I mean, he had worked so hard and dedicated himself for 20 years to Wando High School and the athletic program, and then to have that honor, he was humbled, and we were humbled, I think, that it was decided by the school district that he would have his name on the field.
Move that tarp.
He said his father was his hero.
His mom was there as well, which was really sweet. She passed away about a year ago, actually. after him. And so it was nice to see her there and kind of get them together out on the field, and she was so proud of him.
I wish that his father had been able to see the stadium dedication. It was great that his mother was able to. His father passed away, 9 months before he did? And his father knew of so much. I mean, they talked a lot on the telephone, and knew about Bob's involvement with the stadium. And one time I was having dinner with them, and he said, "You think they'll name that stadium after Bob?" And I said, "Nah, they won't do that." I mean, I was just, one of those things. And I knew that he would be delighted that that field was named after Bob.
Happy birthday! Hey, Bob, we love you!
When his sister called me and told me that I needed to look out the window, that somebody was in the front of our house the night before putting a gigantic sign on our front yard, I thought, oh boy. I wasn't real sure how this was all going to happen, but there were plans in the works for that parade. It was in the peak of COVID, the unknown COVID summer. And so, or spring, I should say, April. And so you couldn't really have those face-to-face interactions. It was a relief for me because I didn't know how to throw a big party for a guy who would hate to have a big party. But to have that parade, he was so, I mean, he was just delighted that that many people thought that much of him to come out and show their support. I mean, people from Goose Creek, from Stratford, from all over the area were in that parade, and friends and coaches and neighborhood people who had gotten caught up in it, and people that came walking by with their dogs or whatever. But he was just pleased as could be to have that many people think that much of him.
Happy birthday, dear Coach Hayes. Happy birthday to you.
It was really great. I know he would thank, of course, his father. He would thank God. He would thank his family for allowing him to have the career that he had. And he would also, I believe, thank the people who, that he learned under. There are, closest to him at Wando was, of course, Lucy Beckham. She held a very high standard at Wando High School. She ruled with a tender but iron fist. I mean, you have to when you have a school that big. Also, Ray Stackley. I mean, he learned a great deal under Ray, and working with Ray and the whole staff at Stratford High School, which is where he met Lucy, obviously, Miss Beckham. And prior to that, he was a graduate assistant at Furman, and he coached under Dick Sheridan, who was very highly organized and a very good football coach, and just learned so much. And going back to his high school coaches, I mean, everybody seems to go back to, where they learned everything, but he had a lot of people that he could emulate himself, which is why it makes me proud that people think of him in that way. I mean, to me, it's another acknowledgement from a very worthy organization of the good work, of the quality of work that he has done. And to be acknowledged by this statewide association is really, to say heartwarming is an understatement. It's just a huge honor to be acknowledged by this organization as one of the top athletic directors in this state.
Please join me in recognizing Robert E. Hayes through his wife, Tracy. Now enshrined in our Hall of Fame is Robert E. Hayes. Travis L. Perry. After a standout high school football career at Greer High, where he graduated in 1988, Travis Perry attended Newberry College on a football scholarship. He enjoyed his next 4 years as a student athlete, where he played 4 years and adored it so much, he joined the coaching staff and served as an assistant football coach. While at Newberry, he obtained his bachelor's degree in physical education. After a season at his alma mater, he was hired in 1993 at Greer High, where he first served as teacher and ultimately held the position of director of athletics, head football coach, head baseball coach, and head soccer coach. Perry was an assistant coach when Greer captured the 1994 state championship and was the head coach when the Yellow Jackets won the 2003 state championship. Perry departed Greer, and from 2004 to 2007, he served as athletic director at Christ Church Episcopal School. Greer was home, however, and he returned to the Yellow Jackets in 2008 as athletic director and defensive coordinator. Perry earned his master's degree in sport administration and was a certified athletic administrator by the NIAAA. He served this organization's board of directors and served 1 year as the president. He was honored when this organization recognized him as Coach of the Year and Athletic Director of the Year. He was selected as the inaugural recipient of the Brave Heart Award from the SCAA board. While Perry was proud of being a USA football master trainer, among his many accomplishments, he loved to fish, especially on Lake Cherokee in Tennessee. He was married to Jeannie, his high school sweetheart, and they have one daughter, Hannah, and a son-in-law-to-be, Elijah. He passed away on May 29th, 2020. And now let's go to the video.
He was one of the greatest people I ever knew. I mean, he was just one of the best, you know, and you look and think, I just have to think when, you know, why did God take him? Because we still needed him here, but I guess he needed him in heaven more. Travis was a perfectionist in everything that he did. He loved every sport. He supported every sport. Male, female, whatever. You know, if it was girls soccer, boys soccer. He coached football, so of course football was his love, but baseball, softball, he just wanted every team to know that they were important, you know, and that they each had value. Volleyball, Hannah played volleyball, so he was a great supporter. He loved Greer High.
His legacy is one of service and devotion to his alma mater. He was very much devoted to the young people of Greer. Travis had a big heart.
I think being a student here and seeing just the impact that he made on my peers' lives, I mean, everyone around me loved my dad, had nothing but great things to say, knew that he was going to be there for them, to love them, support them no matter what sport they played. So for me, it was really cool having him, obviously as my dad, but also the athletic director, and just those different roles. He would come to the games, he would always support me and my team. So it was really cool to kind of have that experience, both being a student and being here with my dad.
Wasn't uncommon to find Travis visiting our special education classrooms daily. It wasn't uncommon to find him taking a young athlete that had some tough circumstances, and it didn't have to necessarily be an athlete, it could be a student.
I have always loved sports, obviously because my dad, I grew up going to football games, baseball games. I remember being a little girl and my mom would just take me with her and we would go visit my dad. We'd take him dinner because he would have those long hours where he would be at games. So I just remember going and being there, and I think that's why I love sports so much, is because I've grown up around it my whole life, and it's something that they instilled in me to love. That teamwork and the bond that you have when you play a sport teaches you a lot about life. And so growing up and seeing my dad in that environment was really special and really shaped me into who I am today.
Travis and Jenny go back a long ways. I think they started dating in high school. Travis was in high school, she may have been in middle school. They started becoming an item early on, and you know, just tremendous love existed between Travis and Jenny.
Well, he was an athlete through high school and when we dated and through college, and so I just knew what it was going to take, you know, to be a coach's wife. I knew it was going to be long hours. When we got married, I knew that it was going to be a lot. So I just committed to that point, to supporting him. When he coached baseball, I went to baseball games. When he coached soccer, I went to soccer matches. When he, you know, was here at the basketball games, I'd come to the basketball games, and I drug her with me. You know, we did everything, and I think that's so important, and maybe what some people miss is that you just have to be involved too. You know, the coach's wife to me, or the AD's wife, has to be present. You know, the kids need to see you. They need to see you support him. And so that's just what I always tried to do. Sometimes at basketball games, like Hannah said, he had long hours, so we'd bring his supper and have dinner in his office, you know. And I think that's what you have to do when you're a coach's wife, you know, or a coach's daughter, coach's son. You know, you just have to play that part and be a part of it and choose to be a part of it. You know, I think that's so important.
Jenny totally supported Travis. She was there night and day, around the clock. And Travis would have been for her too. But they were and are a wonderful family. Totally dedicated to each other, totally dedicated to their vows, uplifting. You know, it showed all the rest of us what really is important in life.
There were also times where, you know, if we could get a quick weekend away, we'd take off, you know, on a Friday to the beach or somewhere, come back on a Sunday, you know, go to the mountains for a couple of days. We like to go fishing. We fish together a lot. And so when we would do things like that, we just tried to take everything else and put it on the back burner. When he was the head football coach, that was a little bit harder. You know, there were times where I would have to say, okay, this weekend we're not going to talk about football. This weekend we're just going to, you know, relax and enjoy, because he could get caught up in it. We were important to him, you know. He made sure that he spent time with us and that he did things that made us happy, things we wanted to do.
Yeah, it was like my mom said, we would go fishing, we would just be outside, we would go on trips. He knew that we loved to do stuff like that, and just spending that quality time with each other was huge. I mean, even on the weekends when he wasn't busy or didn't have anything going on, we would go eat dinner with our family. So that was a huge part of my childhood and memories that I will have forever and definitely cherish. But like I said, he was really funny.
The role that he played in these kids' lives, I mean, he really, really and truly just wanted to teach them to be good members of society. You know, like with his football players, yeah, the game was important, but it was more about teaching them to be men, to take responsibility. And he was like that in everything that he did. I mean, he's had accomplishments and different awards and things like that, but he would always be the one to say, I just have good coaches. He had that rapport with kids. He was just able to get things out of them, you know, to make them want to, they didn't want to disappoint him. Like, they wanted to work hard for him because they didn't want to disappoint him, you know. And he even still has people that he's coached years and years that I still hear from years and years ago, you know, that he coached, and they'll reach out to me and, you know, tell me how much they miss him, or I'll see him out somewhere and they tell me a funny story about him, you know, or how he impacted their life. So I think that was his biggest thing, is that he he had the personality and he just had the ability to reach people.
The door was always open at Greer High School for any former student athlete or former student who wanted to come back and visit and check in and let Coach Perry know how he was doing. And Travis relished this. He, again, had a great heart for people, and he would check in on them when they were in college or as they became young adults. He was there long enough that he could see at least a generation or more of students pass through the hallways and doors.
I think when he was sick and when he was going through his battle with cancer and everything, the amount of people, even who I wasn't really close with in high school, the amount of people that I had that reached out and said, hey, you know, I'm thinking about your dad, I'm praying for him. He made such an impact on my life. He was so special to me, and they would tell me a brief story about something that, you know, small that maybe he did or said through their time here at Greer, and just memories like that are so special to me, and it meant so much, especially when he was going through everything he had to face.
An overflow of patients that day meant only Perry was allowed in the room where he was getting treatment.
The first treatment, I mean, they had put us on a floor and told me I couldn't stay in there with them, you know, because the area would fill up, and so I had to leave the room, and he would have told you I had the worst attitude about it. I didn't want to be there. They'd come over and say, can we get you ginger ale and a pack of crackers or a warm blanket? And he was like, I don't want any of that. And a little lady came in and sat beside him, and she was talking about how excited she was to go to Fripp Island. And he was like, really? He said, we go to Fripp. And they just struck up a conversation. And after that, he came out and he said, I have to change my attitude about this. It was just almost like a switch flipped, and he said, okay, I have to change the way I do this. And he said, so on the way to chemo, when we were going to treatments, he would sit in the passenger side and he'd decide what he was going to post.
Travis did something I thought that was very unique. He compared his treatments and things to a football game. We're in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, it's fourth quarter. He would wear a jersey, he would put some war paint on, he would have his wife Jenny by his side, and the nurses and others that were administering the chemotherapy and things along this line.
And his way was to relate it to football, because that's what he had spent his whole life doing. So I think he touched a lot of people doing it that way. Now, he had his hard moments. I mean, there were times when, you know, it was just us, you know, that he could let that guard down. But he wanted to be a witness to other people. You know, he wanted to use it to glorify God and say, you know, that even though I'm going through this and it's hard, I can still reach other people.
Always communicating with, always sharing. He made a very tragic circumstance and condition very public. And that indeed in and of itself says something about him.
And if I can help other people, and I think that's what a lot of the kids saw, like and not just the kids, but people in our community, you know, would just say, wow, you know, I can't believe. And
the thing we know about the Greer community, the Greer that is Greer for us, is that we take care of our own. And the community rallied in support of Travis and his family. His former players, his current players, they all turned out. They let him know how much he was loved and cared for.
He really fought hard, and it inspired me to just keep pushing through my schoolwork, be the best person I could possibly be, love others, treat everyone with love, and fight hard through anything you're faced with in your life. So.
And really it's what inspired her to become a nurse.
When I first started at Clemson, didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I'll graduate in May of this spring with my marketing degree, but that just really wasn't where my heart is. And watching my dad go through everything he went through, and having those nurses that really just helped him through the hardest times, and they were there for us, there for him. It inspired me to do that. So I'll start my journey to becoming a nurse in August of this year through an accelerated nursing program at Clemson. But without my dad, I don't know if that would be the path that I would have necessarily chosen. But before he passed away, that's what I told him. I said, Daddy, I'm gonna be an RN, I'm gonna be a nurse, I'm gonna help people. And he was kind of at the point, you know, in his sickness where I don't know, I'm sure he heard me when I told him, and he knows, but yeah, he's the root of my passion and why I wanna do what I wanna do with my life, so.
People would say, like they would see the G on his jacket or something, and they would say, oh, you're a Georgia fan? And he'd go, no, I'm not a Georgia fan. This is the real G. This is the real G. This is a Greer G, you know.
The G on our helmets is the same G that the University of Georgia has. Coach Steve Woodward and the late Steve Greer from Greer played at the University of Georgia in the 60s. They liked that G, and it's been widely copied by others. And when we played Greenville High School, Greenville adopted, they would say they didn't, but they did adopt our G. And when we played them, the brand and the great rallying cry is that it's all about the G. It's all about the G. And Travis could get our guys jacked up and excited about playing when it was all about the G.
He just would say, it's all about the G. Boys, it's all about the G. God, Greer, and greatness, you know? It's all about the G, and the 3 G's. God, Greer, greatness. Because you need God in your life, you need to love your community, our school, and strive to be great. Be the best you can be every day.
I think I knew what it was about because, like I said, I grew up going to especially Greer football games since literally I was a newborn.
Yeah.
Don't really remember that, but I remember growing up and going to Dooley Field, going to the games, and so I think when I got here, I kind of already was accustomed to everything. Like, I knew it's all about G, I knew how important athletics were, and so I think just growing up around it, I knew what to expect, but it was really cool actually being here and getting to experience it with my dad.
It's such an honor. This is just such an incredible honor. Of course, I feel like he deserves it. He would say, I just have great coaches. I mean, and that would be what he would say. It's not what I've done, it's the coaches, but sports, they were his passion. That's what he loved. All sports, football especially, you know, but he just had such a passion for what he did. And so for it to be recognized is amazing. You know, he was on the board for years and the president, and you know, I feel like he's given so much.
Travis was very much committed to the South Carolina AAA. He would attend the national conferences. He was on the board at South Carolina AAA. He was very close to the board members there. They were like brothers.
Like Mom said, he was so humble. He would say, I don't deserve it, but he would be so honored. And I mean, he can probably see us right now having this interview, and I know he's probably just grinning ear to ear up in heaven. But I just know he would feel so honored, and this would be just so special to him, and it's so special to us. What an honor. So proud to call him my dad. He was the best.
This recognition for his family, again, is a statement about how much he was valued and appreciated and affirmed by the South Carolina AAA. I would think that they are very humbled, very pleased, and very proud of that singular young man who earned this recognition, because As we say to others, Travis was very special. And I don't think you'll find anybody that ever worked alongside him or who served with him that would tell you any different. He was a very special young man who was gifted in so many areas and who gave so freely of himself to others.
First of all, I think he would thank the good Lord for giving him that position. I mean, you know, and allowing him to do what he did, you know. I think that he would thank his family. He would thank the coaches. He would thank the other athletic directors that he's been fortunate enough to be around, that he's learned from, you know, because he values their opinion. I mean, if he ever had a question about something, it was going to be another one of the ADs that he would reach out to, you know. So he valued them, not just professionally, but as friends.
Travis's legacy is that he made a difference, and he left an impact that will last long after all of us are gone. And future generations will hear of his goodness and will hear of his contributions to the development of young people.
But to know that this is here and it's always going to be here and for years and years to come. Even, you know, when younger kids come up through and they say, oh, well, this gym's dedicated to Coach Perry. Tell me about Coach Perry, you know. And so I feel like his legacy is going to live.
Please join me in recognizing Travis Perry through his wife, Jeannie. Now enshrined in our Hall of Fame is Travis L. Perry. J. Myles Wilson, Jr., a graduate of the University of South Carolina, has served as Spartanburg School District 7's athletic administrator for athletic facilities and operations since 2011, having acted as the athletic director for Spartanburg School District 7. He started with the Spartanburg High as an assistant athletic director from 1992 to 2001. He oversaw athletic facilities at 4 Spartanburg area schools and operations at Duncan Park, the Swim Center, and a practice complex in Spartanburg School District 7. He was active with the NIAAA Publications Committee and in 2014 was recognized as the NFHS National Coach Educator of the Year. Named in 2013 as the South Carolina Public Risk Manager of the Year, he also received the NIAAA South Carolina State Award of Merit. Wilson was the 2011 recipient of the Charles Stewart Athletic Administrator Award, having been named the 2009-10 Athletic Director of the Year from this organization. Wilson was the 2007-8 4A State Athletic Director of the Year and earned Region 2 4A Athletic Director of the Year honors 3 times. He was a past president of this organization and past Region 2 4A coordinator. Wilson was featured on SCETV's Southern Lens as he discussed the storied history of Spartanburg's Duncan Park Baseball Stadium. Wilson was a member of the South Carolina High School League's Advisory Council, the South Carolina High School League's Constitution Review and Revisions Committee. He served as this organization's AD Mentoring Committee and our Scholarship Committee, and was a leadership training instructor for the SCAA. For a decade, Wilson was the Palmetto State's liaison to the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association, and for 14 years attended the National Conference including time as a state delegate. He most recently served as chairman of the Spartanburg High School Athletic Endowment. During his career, Wilson served on the Development Committee for Athletic Partnership between Spartanburg School District 7 and the City of Spartanburg. He was involved with the Spartanburg Convention and Visitors Bureau Summit on Athletics, the Spartanburg School District 7 Wellness Committee, the Spartanburg County Parks and Recreation Assessments and Needs Summit. He is a past member of the South Carolina Beef Board, Beef Commodity Board Vice Chairman, and past board member of the Clemson University Extension Service Advisory Board and the South Carolina Cattlemen's Association. Wilson is a past president and board member of Spartanburg Cattlemen's Association, executive board member of the South Carolina Farm Bureau of Spartanburg, board member of the South Carolina Public Risk Management Association, an instructor with the Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System AHA Training Center. He operated a Black Angus cow-calf farm in Spartanburg along with a honeybee apiary, while hunting and fishing occupied much of his spare time. He was married to the former Margaret Peach of Alabama for 27 years. To his credit, he was a certified interscholastic coach, a certified athletic administrator, a certified beef producer and beekeeper, a master tree farmer and wildlifer, an established bat researcher. He passed away on August 28, 2020. And now let's go to the video.
Myles was many things. He's the smartest person I've ever known in my life. I didn't realize this would be so hard because I don't do this a whole lot. He was the smartest person I ever knew. He was the kindest person I ever knew. And he had so many different interests, from bees to motocross to golf to raising cattle to farming to you name it. I mean, he was interested in everything. He researched everything to an exhaustive level. It took us a year to buy a washer because we researched it that much. And so, and had a notebook compiled on different washing machines and dryers to that level, the littlest thing we researched. And I say we royally, it was really Myles who did the research. I just basically went and said what's on sale. And so he was one of the most curious people I've ever known. He wanted to know more about everything. Well, any of the ADs in this audience will know that it's a 24/7 job, but he loved it. He loved everything about Spartanburg High School. He lived, breathed, drank, ate Spartanburg High School. His blood just was blue and gold. And he only wanted it to be the best. And I can remember more nights than I care to talk about. We were talking about this earlier, that I kept a picnic basket probably for the 10 years that he was doing athletics exclusively, because we had dinner in his office over his desk. You know, I would pack dinner and we would have dinner in his office over his desk. And it was about sports, it was about kids, it was about nurturing them, it was about helping them get where they wanted to be. It was about them finding their place at Spartanburg High School and loving Spartanburg High School as much as he did. Being the AD of Spartanburg High School was Myles's dream job. He never aspired to anything else. When he was named that was the proudest moment. We went out for a big special dinner. If you ask anybody about who was the cheap one of the family, it would have been me. And so going out for a big special dinner like that was was huge, but we went out for a big special dinner. I just wanted him to be happy. I just wanted him to love it, and whatever it took, from having players over for dinner that we weren't sure had good meals. So there were just a lot of things that it was whatever he saw, whatever I saw that he needed, that's what I wanted to do. Because he loved it so much, I loved it that much. He wanted it to be the best. He wanted there to be sports that included every kid so that every child could find their place. Every student had a place to go. He really believed that athletics was just an extension of the classroom. He believed you learned as much on the field and courts and floors of competition as you did in a classroom. And you really learned about life. And that's what he wanted kids to learn, was to learn the discipline, the love of the school, of the sport, and to want to stay there to better themselves. If he loved, like he loved SCAA, he loved Spartanburg High School, but it wasn't the institution he loved the people that made it up. And that when, shortly after he passed away, I was going through computers and trying to find passwords and all of those kinds of things that you have to do, and it was jammed with pictures of people he cared so much about. A lot of them were SCAA members that he maintained close friendships with, but he loved people. I found pictures that went back his entire career of players and coaches he worked with when they were very young. One of them is our current superintendent, is a very young man and a young coach, but he loved him and he kept the picture. So that's just one of the things that made Myles so special. He loved people and life. Myles maintained relationships with most of his players. When I was going through some of his things from work, there was a large stack of pictures of players that he had had over the years that meant something to him. And one of those is now my assistant principal. And so it was neat to hand him that picture of him from his football days when he was trying to look very serious. And I said, you know, Myles loved you if he kept your picture. And so it was neat to hand that to my assistant principal and say, you know, he must have loved you a whole bunch. One of my favorite, I'm not sure if he was the AD then, we were going to a state championship, and I still have this picture hanging on our wall. We were headed to a football state championship, and he was over the moon excited. I think Stephen Davis was playing in that, so he may not have been the AD just yet. Was playing in that state championship, and Amp Simmons is getting ready to catch the football, and Myles is standing on the sideline in the picture doing this. And that was him. That was his love for Spartanburg High School, was this. He was so excited and so happy to see that happening, and he just loved it. That was one of my favorite stories about him as an AD. I think they all knew that he had their back and that he supported them vigorously. He was very much a coach's AD, but he also advocated for a player. Myles is very much about right is right, wrong is wrong, and there's really no gray area for him. And he always wanted to be right for coaches and players. And I hope that's what they saw in him, because that's what I saw in him. And I think they really respected him. Myles was huge on education, huge. He really believed in that, and he believed that coaches needed ongoing education, just like teachers. To recertify or to certify as a teacher, you needed to be certified as a coach. He believed in especially the coaches that SCAA offered because of even parent relationships. How do you build parent relationships? How do you perfect your craft? All of those kinds of things. How do you work with your sport to make it better? He was one of the first coaches, I believe, or ADs in the state to have all of his coaches certified And I don't know how many have followed him, but he was, I know, the first to have every coach in our district certified with certified coaches. And he was so proud of that shining accomplishment and proud of his coaches for doing it. His beliefs were so well aligned with the philosophy of Spartanburg athletics that he worked passionately for that school district. He was a character. He was a lot of fun. He made life fun. I was telling somebody earlier, they asked how we met. And we met on a blind date. And we were going with another couple who's a good friend of mine to a Christmas party. And I really didn't want to go with him at all. And because I was afraid he was going to be short, number one, and I'm very tall. And I really just was through with blind dates. But I went, and I introduced him as the wrong person the entire night to everyone. And I introduced him as a local furniture store owner all night. But when I got home, I'm from Christmas holidays, there was a letter in my mailbox from him thanking me for the best date he'd ever had. And he hoped I would do him the honor of having dinner with him when I returned. And I knew right then I would just die if I couldn't marry Myles Wilson. And so 4 years later, I finally married him. It took him a long time to ask me, but 4 years later, I married that sweet man and never looked back. Myles was so funny. He loved to joke better than anybody I knew and tried to find a joke every day. He'd call me and tell me a joke just to make sure that I laughed. He was a prankster. He loved a prank more than anybody I know, and executed them to perfection. His favorite thing to do with me, and I miss it terribly now, but I could be somewhere in the house, and I am the kind of person that just tunes into their own little world and can filter everything else out. And his favorite thing to do was stealth-like sneak up behind me to startle me. And he would laugh for a good 30 minutes after he did it, usually while I fussed at him. But he loved that more than anything else. I think that was one of his favorite things to do because he was a late sleeper, I'm an early riser, and usually it was in the early morning when I'm in there doing something in the house, and he would sneak up behind me. I'd never heard him, and scare me. Really not scare, startle.
Myles Wilson died on Friday. He was most recently the Assistant Director of Athletic Facilities and Operations for that district.
I can now say it, but originally I didn't want anything about COVID mentioned because I didn't want it to define him, and I didn't want him to be a statistic, and I didn't want that to be how people remembered him. And I had a huge insistence with all the television stations that covered his death and his funeral, and with the ministers, with everybody. Nobody could say the word COVID at all, because that's not what he was. And I was fiercely protective, and still am, of his memory. Because that's the last thing I can do for him, is protect that. So it's okay now to say COVID. It truly is. If he did anything, it was done with the greatest love of the people he did things with. And one of his last texts to me, and I think he had tried to say it to John Cann in one of his final calls to John, was, "I love you. Tell them I love them." And I said, "Sweetheart, they know you love them." He said, "But they need to hear it. So please tell them I love them." And that's when I said, I will tell them right now, but you will tell them when I pick you up from the hospital on Friday with Hank in the back seat. Hank was his other great love, our dog. Oh my gosh, was his best buddy. And I think Hank and I both went through a year of mourning and grieving him not being there. But if he loved anything, it was because of the people. And that's how I really want him to remember, is that he just loved you. He just loved you. If you'll notice, and Myles loved this dog because he was so mischievous. Hank is the most mischievous dog, and he's really okay with that. He is truly okay with being the baddest, sweetest dog we ever had. He is fine with it. And in the picture, you'll notice there's a leash off to the side because you could not trust Hank off of a leash. And so, but it was the best leash. He had ordered that leash especially for that photo session, so that Hank had the prettiest collar and the prettiest leash. But he would say to me all the time, he goes, you know, this is my favorite dog, and he's my best buddy. And then he would follow it up with, besides you. And so, that he just loved Hank. Myles was one of those people, he never said anything unless he truly meant it. And sometimes that was his best quality, and sometimes maybe not his best quality. But he never said anything he didn't mean or he couldn't be 100% honest about. Character and integrity was everything to him. So he would say back to you, thank you, and I love you for this because you thought enough of me to honor me. And I'm not sure I'm worthy of this, but I'm grateful for this. I'm thrilled that he's receiving this reward. So many of the people in this organization became my friend by extension and by default because of Myles. And the support that they've honored us with before his death and after his death for me has just been so amazing. So for him to be remembered, that's so important to those who are left behind. It's important that his name is spoken and that he's remembered. I'm grateful for the legacy that it creates and the memory that it creates for him, because in my mind, nobody's more deserving than he is. But he would be so proud and so humbled all in the same breath, and so honored because he loved this organization really from almost its inception to his death. But it was because of the people in it. So he would be so honored that somebody would think so much of him to induct him into this, and he would be so honored, proud, and humbled. And I have to believe somehow he's here, he knows, he's aware of this, and he is saying to all of you right now, thank you. I love you for this honor.
Please join me in recognizing Myles Wilson and his wife, Margaret. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending and helping us honor these outstanding athletic directors in our state. And please join me in giving the class of 2022 Hall of Fame members a final round of applause. Before we conclude this afternoon, know that this day could not and would not have been possible without the help, guidance, and direction of Joe Quigley. And I will ask that you join me in thanking him with a round of applause. I offer a word of thanks to everybody's friend, Margaret and John Carlisle, who has successfully laid the foundation for this event and for being a dear friend to us all, especially me. Thank you. And by the way, today is the anniversary of John's 39th birthday, and I'll ask you to join me in singing happy birthday to our friend John Carlisle. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear John, happy birthday to you. We also thank our sponsors and donors again for the support: Harold Waters of Herff Jones, Mark Hood of Carolina Sports Photography, Dusty Rhodes of Jostens, and the Holiday Inn Riverview. Again, congratulations to our honorees. Thank you for your attendance, and please be careful on your return home. Thank y'all very much.